Hey there, I'm Lance and I'm a gamer.
And I'm Sam and I'm a non-gamer.
And we are Love to Hate, where we help gamers find great games to play with non-gamers.
And today we're taking a look at Quorum by Devir.
Quorum is a track progression game with a Roman Empire theme attached to it. Now with this particular game, what you will have, you are going to have lots of cards, and the cards are going to be a part of multiple different types of sets. And they're also going to allow you to advance on one or multiple different tracks in this game. The tracks represent the different parts of the world that the Roman Empire had control over back in the ancient times. And so you are basically trying to have influence in the different parts of the Roman Empire. That's the theme in this particular game. There's some interesting artwork in this one, very nice components. Let's go down to the table. I'll show you how this one works, and then we'll come back and share our thoughts on it as a gamer and non-gamer. All right, I have Quorum on the table. Let me show you all this game about the Roman Empire. Now, for components, what you're going to have is you're going to have the map, which is going to consist of this main center board that's got the score track around it, as well as these different region spokes, if you will, that are going to represent the different regions of the Roman Empire. You've got Gallia, Hispania, Asia, Africa, Macedonia, and Germania. And each of these are different tracks that you are going to be trying to progress along using your track progression marker. You do have a score tracker marker in the game. You've got these tokens that are going to have numbers ranging from 1 all the way up to 4, and these are going to be multiplier bonuses for each of the different tracks. And of course, you've got lots of cards in the game. This lineup here represents Rome. You'll be drafting cards from it. In addition to the cards that you see out here, there are going to be some god cards. We'll come back to those here in a second. Just know that at the beginning of the game, when you're setting this up, you won't have these in that deck. You will first deal out a hand of 4 cards to everybody, and then you will shuffle in these god cards into this deck. I've kept these off to the side for right now. You do also have a really nice player aid that you will give to every player. Now, how this game is going to work, starting with the first player, you will always draft 1 card from this market, Rome, and you will add that to your hand of 4 cards to make 5 cards, and then you will immediately play one of those cards face up in front of you. You'll do this 12 times, so you'll have 12 cards in front of you, and after everybody has played their 12th card, the game will end and you'll go to final scoring. And that's all there is to a turn. Really, it's up to what's on the cards to determine how you do in this game. So let's cover what are on these cards. As you can see, there are 4 different types of cards, as denoted by the different colored background, as well as these icons in the top right. And really what you're paying attention to are the type of card, the number on this shield in the upper left, as well as the color of the banner with the sketch of the different animals that represent the different regions, and the number that's right above that, as that's going to denote which track you get to progress along. So this card right here, it has the purplish background with the number 2 on it, which means that I would get to advance 2 spaces on the Asia purple track right here. And essentially what you're trying to do on these tracks is you're trying to be the person who has advanced the farthest on each of these, as that's going to give you the full value of the multiplier at the end of the game. The people who finish behind you, they're going to get 1 less for each place they come in after first. And so if you, in a 3-player game, let's say if the marker's only on a 2, then the person who finishes 3rd on this track, they're not going to get anything for it because they're going to be left with 0. And anything times 0 is 0. So you definitely don't want to be last on these tracks. But anyhow, let's talk about how each of these different types of cards work, as they're part of a different type of set. We'll start first with the military cards right here. So the military cards are quite simple. It really has to do with just whatever number is on this shield. And essentially what you're trying to do with that is you're trying to get a pair of consecutive numbers or 3 numbers that are consecutive. So in other words, I've got a 1. If I could get a 2, that would be a pair 1, 2, and that would get me 5 points at the end of the game. However, if I could get 1, 2, and 3, that would get me 10 points. And so that's what you're trying to do with the military card. cards, very simple. The next set will be the trading cards, and they're going to have this bluish background with these yellow circles on it. Sometimes there's 3 on there, sometimes there will be 2 on there. And essentially, there's going to be different types of goods on those circles. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to get at least 4, or well, you really want at least 2, but as many as 4 of one particular type to increase the number of points you'll get. If all you have is just 1, that's not going to get you anything. But if you have 2 of any one type of good, that's going to get you 2 points. If you're able to get 3 of one type of good, well, that's going to get you 4 points. And if you could get 4 of one type of good, that'll get you 6 points. So that's how the trade cards work in the game. The next one we'll cover are the architecture cards. They're going to have this brown border on them and some sort of picture in the middle of some sort of building, some architecture known in Rome. And so you can see the Colosseum right here. Well, you want to try to get as many different architecture cards that have the different pictures in the middle. So here is another example, and it is different, and that's going to increase the value of this set. You can take a look here on the player aid. There are going to be 6 different types of architecture cards. Getting all 6 will get you 24 points. So that's how the architecture cards are going to work for you. The next one is going to be, the next one and last one is going to be the intrigue card, and these are going to work in a multiplying manner. So you've got the yellowish background with this guy who looks like he's standing in front of the Senate giving some sort of speech, and that's the intrigue cards. Now, however many of these you get multiplied by the number of cards that have a 3 on the shield. So here's a 3 on the shield. That's how many points you're getting. So I've got 1 intrigue card multiplied by my number of 3 cards. So 1 times 1 is 1. However, if I had 2 3 cards, well, now I've got 1 intrigue times 2 3 cards. Now I'm getting 2 points. And if I had another intrigue card, well, I've got 2 times 2 for 4 points. I think you guys kind of get the idea on how these work. Now, if you did get an intrigue card that has a 3 on it, that's great because it will work on both ways, and that would really get you a lot of points. So essentially that's how the different sets in the game work. When you play the card, really all that's going to happen for you, though, because you're getting all of these points at the end of the game, the only thing that's happening when you play the card is you're advancing along the track that corresponds to whatever the card you just played is. And that's all there is to a turn. So I'm taking a card from the Roman market, and then I'm adding it to my hand, and then I'm playing that face up in front of me and advancing along whatever track is on the card that I just played. Now, you'll refill the market with cards as they're drawn, but then you're going to come across these god cards, and these god cards are going to have this background on it. As you've noticed probably, all the other cards have the different region that is on it to denote, to tell you that this is going to allow you to go up the Hispania track. Now, you don't know what type of card it is on the backside. In this case, it's one of those intrigue cards, but you did know that it was going to advance you on the blue Hispania track. These god cards don't give you any info other than telling you that this is a god card. They will come out face down in the market, and when you take one of them, what they're going to let you do is always advance 1 space on any track of your choice, but then it's going to affect the multiplier bonus to the tracks that are adjacent to that track. So in other words, if I wanted to go up, let's say Asia again, I would get to go up 1 on Asia, and then the track that's to the left of the track that I advanced, in this case that's Hispania, we're going to add 1 to that. So we'll replace the 2 with the 3. And then the track that is to the right of the track that I advance, in this case that's going to be Africa, is going to go down 1. Now that's just this Mars card. Now, not all the god cards are the same. You're going to have a whole bunch of different types. You've got Pluto here, which is going to let each one of them go up 1, whereas Neptunus is going to cause both of them to go down. And so there's a lot of different ones here, and there's the different mythological gods that you're probably familiar with. But anyhow, that's how these god card works. Now, when you take a god card, it's immediately going to activate. You'll take it. flip it over, show it to everybody, make your choice for where you're going to advance, and then affect the different bonuses. But then this card stays in your hand, and it will never come out of your hand. So it basically clogs up your hand for the rest of the game because it's one less card in your hand that you could ever play. And so at max, you can only take 4 God cards throughout the course of the game. I would recommend not doing that, though, because then you always have to play the card that you take out of Rome. You don't have many choices if you clog up your hand that much. Now, at the end of the game, which is triggered whenever when all players have played their 12th card, you're then going to see who has advanced the furthest on these tracks. Now, each of these tracks are going to score you points in a different way, and you are reminded of that on the back of your player aid. For instance, Africa is going to give you points for the cards that you have that have a 1 on the shield. And so let's say that I finish first here on the 3, and let's say the purple player only has 1. Now, if there is ever a tie, it's always whoever's on bottom that breaks that tie. So in this case, blue is breaking the tie against purple or pink, whatever color that is. And the multiplier in this case is 1. And so it's the number of cards that you have that are good for that track, which again, in Africa, it's always the one that has the 1 on the shield, multiplied by whatever the multiplier is. And then for the person who finishes second, you would lower that multiplier by 1 to a minimum of 0. And that's how that's going to work. So if we're playing in a 2-player game, only the first player is getting points here because you would then minus 1 for the second player. So 0, you're not getting any points in Africa. That's how that's going to work. Basically all the spokes will work that way. The Asia track gets you points for your cards that have 2 on them. The Germania track is going to give you points for your intrigue cards. Gallia is going to give you points for your military. Hispania, points for your trade cards. And Macedonia, points for your architecture cards. So that's how the different tracks are going to work. But then you will get those points that I mentioned earlier for the different sets that you've been building up. The military, the trade, the architecture, the intrigue. You'll keep track of your points on the score track. If you pass 40, you get to flip this over, and it does have a plus 40 on the back side of it, which is pretty cool. And whoever has the most points is going to be the winner, and that is how you play Quorum. Let's go back up top and share our thoughts on this one. And we're back, and now we're going to share our thoughts on Quorum from a gamer and non-gamer's perspective. So Sam, this is a track progression game, which is a mechanic that maybe we don't really cover all too often here on Love to Hate, as it typically is a mechanic that is seen in a game that would have something maybe more than just track progression. You typically see it in maybe heavier games, as it's something that you can do amongst all the other things that you can do. And so it's not typically something that's like just front and center, the main thing with the game, but that kind of is the main thing with this game, in addition to maybe some set collection as all the different cards build up to these different sets. So this is a different kind of game for us to look at. What were your initial impressions with Quorum?
I mean, it definitely looks interesting. It reminded me of Sorry.
Sorry.
Just the way the board
I see what you
set
mean by that, yeah.
It does not play anything like Sorry, but when I saw it,
yeah,
I thought of Sorry.
Yeah, okay, I see what you mean.
Yeah, it has
like,
nothing to do with the game.
It does not play anything like Sorry.
No.
What did you think about the different set collections with the way the cards work and how the cards are different parts of different sets?
I like set collection games typically. I always have the problem of wanting to do everything,
right, and
having trouble narrowing it down. But I do think this game, like you couldn't do it all. You really had to narrow it down. So I think it made it easier to kind of guide you into what's going to work for you versus like having all these options and having to pick.
I do agree with you 100% on that, because that is something that I find to be very challenging in a lot of games playing with non-gamers, is that you can see the non-gamers playing a game and getting spread too thin. I don't think that happens too much in this game, because it's almost like there's, and this might sound like a con, but there's almost too many things to think of, to consider with this one. Yeah. So it's easier to just be like, I'm just going to like really go for this.
Yeah.
And you just really pour yourself into this one thing to keep it simple. And that kind of works for you in this game a little bit. Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win, but you might do well with that mindset. So is that a fun thing for you with this one?
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, I enjoyed it, and I think it was easy enough to kind of figure out, okay, this is what I'm going to do with this card, so I'm going to do with that card. I had more difficulty with figuring out how the cards related to the track.
Yeah.
I was better at the set collection, but you're kind of doing two things at once, and there is some iconography on the cards. Not a ton, but just trying to figure out what that card, how it's going to help me in both ways, because it can help you with points now and then at the end.
Yes.
And I was better at the end game than I was at the...
And I was not. I was absolutely not with that. I found the end game scoring to be...
It felt like it almost felt like it had to be one or the other. It's very hard to do both.
It did. It did not feel like it correlated at all with what you're doing throughout the game. I think you're exactly right. You really had to decide, well, I'm just going to get my points now versus forget everything that's going on in the game. I'm just working towards
I was literally never looking at the tracks, only looking at my cards. And did I end up winning?
You did.
Yeah.
You did. Mm-hmm.
By complete default.
Uh-huh. Or maybe it was your sister. I don't know.
It wasn't Lance.
It was not me at all. I did not do very well in this game. And not that means that it was a bad game for me. I actually really kind of enjoyed this game. I do wonder, though, if it is not complex, but just too many layers to consider.
Yeah, I think it's... I'm trying to think of a good... Analogy. I hate to say broken.
Okay.
We've seen games that are broken.
Yeah.
But it just seems there's a disconnect. Maybe.
Yeah. So I've used kind of this statement before in other games that that there can be two different things that are tied together in the game, but don't seem to really work well with each other.
Yeah.
Is that kind of what you mean? Like maybe that the way the cards work together in a set does not work so great with how they progress you on the different tracks.
Yeah.
Because I could agree with that too.
You can't pick a card and say, oh, this is going to really help me in the end game, but also help me progress. You really, as you're picking cards, you're thinking of one or the other.
Yeah.
Rarely are you going to say, this works for both.
Yeah.
So in that way, you kind of do need to focus on one or the other.
Yeah. Now, I will say I think the game does provide really good choices throughout the course of it because... you really have to kind of, figure out which lane am I going to go into early on in this game. And again, really kind of pour yourself into that. And so if you start to see, okay, I'm getting, a lot of the architecture cards, so I'm just going to really build into that set. Well, you can do that in this game. Or I'm advancing really well on the track that gives me points for the twos. So I'm going to either keep advancing on that track to ensure I get it, or I'm going to get a lot of twos. Yeah. So there are ways for you to really pour yourself into one thing. But man, I don't think there's much of a way to really kind of spread yourself beyond that too much in this game. So, okay, let's get to pros and cons here with Quorum. What were some of the bullet point highlights that stood out well for you as a non-gamer? I mean, it was an easy enough game to play. The setup was easy, and then figuring out the set collection can be really difficult in some games depending on how it's organized or how you get the points. But I thought it was pretty simple in this game. And moving on the tracks was easy too. It was just... finding the cards that let you. Yeah, exactly. And so, it didn't last terribly long either. It says 45 minutes. I don't think it goes as long as the box says it does. Yeah. And it didn't feel like we were there forever. No. And I wonder if 45 minutes is, 4-player count the very first time you play. Maybe. But I don't know. It says 14 plus, and I feel like our 10-year-old could probably have figured it out. Maybe. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe not. But it definitely does not feel like a 45-minute game because really you're just picking a card, playing a card. Yeah. And so that's all a turn is. You do that 12 times, game's over. So I don't know where the 45 minutes is coming from. Yeah. Maybe that is 4-player count first time you play. I don't know. I will agree with Sam on a lot of those pros for it. Some of the other things that I would say, I think it looks very interesting and colorful out on the table. I enjoy the different pegs the sorry board look that Sam mentioned earlier, and I enjoy that each one is a different color. There is a con that I have with that here in just a minute, though. And I enjoy track progression games, and I like that the fact that this one has, 6 tracks that you're trying to progress on. So that is lots of choices tied into that, figuring out, do I want to advance on this track? Do I want to advance on that one? And track progression naturally has good player interaction with it. So there's competition involved in this game, which means each turn I feel is pretty interesting, pretty exciting just to see, okay, she's going on that track. What am I going to do about that kind of thing? So that's a good part of the game for me. Anything about it that maybe doesn't work so great?
I think it's really hard to find your strategy because you don't, yes, you see where the other players are moving, but you don't see anything else from them.
Yeah, that's true.
So
that's true.
It's kind of, you're just...
Unless you're like really observant for what cards they're building up and what sets they're working towards. But it's almost, it's a lot of things for you to consider just with your own stuff, let alone figuring out what everybody else is doing. I feel like
it's not a game where you can be like, okay, this is going to be my next move so that I can beat them. You can say, this is my next move because it's going to progress me and I'm going to do better. But as far as that offensive playing, it's really not there.
Yeah, because, and we've mentioned this as a pro in other videos, that you don't have a score track in this game. So you don't know how many points anybody has until the very end. It does have a score track. It's in the center of the board. But what I meant by that is that you're not keeping points throughout the course of the game. They're all at the end game. And that's a pro because, if a player is behind 40 points early in the game, they might feel like, well, there's no point to even continue playing. So you still have buy-in throughout the course of the game. But Sam is correct. It's nearly impossible to really try to figure out, am I beating you?
Yeah.
Are your sets better than my sets? So I think that could be a pro or a con. Any other cons?
I think the theme is kind of pasted on a little bit.
It is.
I didn't really pay attention to the fact that there was a
Roman theme.
Yeah, a Roman theme, which I don't care. I'm not a big like theme person, but if somebody's into that and like, oh, this would be a great game because I like Rome.
And it has Roman mythology somewhat attached to it as well. But I
think you could do anything and have the same,
For me, so I mentioned earlier the colors on the spokes, if you will, the tracks. I liked the way it looks out on the table. I did not care for the way that they distinguished the cards being for what track it would advance you on. Because really what it is like they used some sort of iconography that matched like with each different track. And they're like these I can't think of the artistic word, not two-tone necessarily, but they're basically these sketch drawings of different animals, and the coloring is just on the sketch lines. It's not like it's big and observant and clear what coloring it is, and I found myself advancing on one track and halfway through the game being like, wait a second, that's not even the right track. I got to take all that back and move up on the track I was supposed to be moving on, which totally blew up my strategy because I was like thinking, I thought I was going up this track when I was really going up that track. I did not want to go up that track. So the iconography on the cards was not super clear for what it was supposed to be intended to do. At least that's what I felt like. They could have done a different way to distinguish this card goes for this track here. Also, the artwork, while the artwork is interesting and really it draws you in, it does somewhat seem a little busy on some of the cards. And the stuff that's on the cards can be pretty important, depending on what the cards are. Now, some cards aren't really important at all. You just need to see those icons on them. But like the architecture cards, you really want to focus on that picture in the middle. The trade cards, you really want to focus on what's on those circles. And I don't know, I just felt like that the artwork could have been a little more, toned down or muted. Maybe, I don't know. some things were clear, some things were not so clear, I guess is where I'm coming out with that. Okay, let's get to our score. Scale of 1 to 10, love to hate. Where does Quorum come in at for you?
I'd probably give it a 6.3.
6.3. Okay. Yeah. Any reasoning for that?
It was fine. It doesn't really pop for me. I think we have other games that have we have other track progression games. We have other set collection games. I just don't know. So I would play it again if you wanted to, because it's not one of those games where I'm like, absolutely never again. It was fine. It just wasn't a star.
Okay. I did enjoy it. I thought it was a pretty interesting game. I do like track progression a lot of times in most games, and this is chock full of that. And I also like the set collection. I think the thing with this game is that you're either gonna love this one or you're not. I don't know that a lot of people are gonna be middle of the road. Well, I guess you were middle of the road on it. I don't know, but. I don't know. I really did find this one to be interesting throughout the course of the game, but I could also see why a lot of people would be like, man, I don't know. That was tough to get into.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where I'm coming at on you're either going to like it or you're not. For me, I'm probably going to give it a 7.6. I don't know. I did enjoy it, and I definitely would play it again. So this might be one of the ones.
Biggest discrepancy.
Yeah, this might be one where we're kind of far apart on. So that's an interesting mix with this one. So the game is Quorum. It is from Devir. It is an interesting kind of game. So definitely check it out. Leave us some comments down below. Let us know what you think about Quorum.
Make sure to like and subscribe and push that bell button so you get notification of all our new content.
I'm Lance.
I'm Sam.
And we're Love to Hate, where we bridge the gap between gamers and non-gamers. We'll catch you next time.